Alright, hey everyone, TJ here, Mako Sports, and today I'll be doing a little overview or rundown of my camera rig that I use to shoot sports events, just like this one. Alright, so even though this uses a Super 35 video camera, this can easily be applied to, any sort of mirrorless or DSLR style camera. But to go ahead and get started with everything, my camera of choice is the Sony FS5, as you can see here. A little bit larger of a camera than say like an A7 III or another mirrorless camera, but it does have a couple of nice features. Now, of course, it is a little bit of an older camera as well, but like I said, it does have a couple of nice features. One thing for starters is that it has a built-in variable ND filter, which is fantastic for when you're shooting outdoors. It has built-in XLR inputs for your audio. It's got just better ergonomics overall and makes kind of shooting video to be just a little bit easier than with the traditional photo style camera. A couple of the features that I like specifically about this camera are, once again, that built-in variable ND filter, the XLR inputs, as well as it does 240 frames per second in slow motion. All that is also in 10-bit 422 and 1080p, which is fantastic. You can also shoot 120 frames per second. Of course, being a traditional video camera, it has, as you can see on the side of the body over here, tons of different buttons, so that way you're not spending time or wasting time diving through menus. You can really just quickly, change different settings on the body, like white balance and your ISO or your gain, shutter speed really easily if you need to do that. So all in all, just kind of makes shooting video just a little bit easier. Now, my lens of choice since then has upgraded. I'm currently now using the Sony 100-400 G Master, which I found to be a fantastic lens so far. I upgraded to the 70-300, or from the 70-300, which is a pretty good lens by itself, but this one is certainly definitely that higher step above. Of course, you get the longer zoom range, 100-400 millimeters, which is fantastic, especially if you're using like an APS-C body like an A6400 or an A6600, as well as the same category with Super 35 cameras like this one. It has that same crop factor, 1.5x. Now, if you're using it on a full frame camera, it still is a nice zoom range, but really I found it to be perfect on Super 35 cameras, or if you're shooting in like a Super 35 mode. It's super sharp, it renders colors really nicely as well, and also it has built-in image stabilization, which is always nice to have. Also, it's not, as massive as like the 200-600 is, but it's still kind of a similar weight and size to like a 70-200 2.8 if you ever used one of those before. So it's not like massive, but you can still pack it up really nicely into a smaller bag if you need to do that. Now, since this is still a little bit of a heavier lens, you're going to want to use a lens support like I have here, just to kind of relieve a little bit of stress on that lens mount, because of course we all know the E-mount isn't the strongest mount out there, so just one thing to take a note if you're looking to upgrade to at least a 100-400. Alright, so coming just above the camera, you can see I have this little aluminum plate here. This is SmallRig's FS5 cheese plate. It's just, like I said, just a little cheese plate that you can use to mount accessories on top of, like I've done here. Just above that, I have this SmallRig dual cable clamp, which I use to clamp the SDI cable that I use to get a picture on my monitor, as well as the DTAP cable for the monitor. So that way I can power the monitor and the camera with the exact same battery, which is nice if you want to keep your overall weight of your rig down. Instead of using the traditional option of using like a cinema camera battery, like a AB mount battery or a V mount battery, I'm using the regular Sony BPU style batteries, which are a lot smaller, a lot lighter, easier to travel with, and overall just keeps the weight of the rig down, something that I really prefer to do. Okay, so I went ahead and rotated my monitor so that way you guys can see a little bit clearer. This is the Portkeys BM5, really nice monitor for the money. It's got a solid aluminum build. It's got SDI in and HDMI in, so depending on if you're using different cameras, it's nice because you can go back and forth between the two. It's got a whole bunch of different scopes like waveforms. I believe it has a vector scope, false colors, zebras. It's got different frame guides, really anything you really want in this monitor. It's also 5 inches, so it's not as big as a 7-inch monitor, which can sometimes feel a bit unwieldy on these smaller cameras, but it's not as small as the stock LCD screen. So you can see your image and your focus a little bit easier than if you were using the stock screen. So really the biggest feature of this monitor is the brightness. Now it has 3 different brightness levels. I believe the lowest is 400, the second is 1000, and the third is 2200 nits. Now when you're at that highest tier brightness, that 2200 nits, it's very bright and easy to see outdoors, which is fantastic. Something I really wanted for this rig, because this is, for me at least, is really kind of a daylight rig. So having this, super bright monitor without really needing to use a sunscreen or a sun hood has been really beneficial. All right, so coming over to the other side of the rig, I have my microphone of choice, which is the Audio-Technica AT875R. Very affordable shotgun microphone, still has a great build quality, being, I believe this is solid aluminum. And for a rig like this, it's beneficial that the microphone isn't super long, which is nice because you don't have to worry about it kind of protruding into your shot, at least if I was using a wider lens, of course. Now, to mount this, I have the small rig monitor mount that connects via a 15mm rod. This mount is fantastic. I was actually very surprised by it. It has a built-in shock system. As you can see, I tilt it forward and backwards. And because it has an adjustable clamp, you can use different sizes of microphones. Of course, with this one, I have this silicone sleeve. That's not really needed. I just had a bunch of them lying around, so I decided to use it. On top of the microphone, of course, I use this fuzzy windscreen to kind of reject some of that, low-level wind noise, which is really annoying. To connect it to the camera, I have this 1-foot pink XLR cable. I like to use different color cables like you can see with my SCI cable, so that way it makes it a little bit easier to distinguish in your camera bag, at least when you're kind of getting everything set up, especially if you need to set up everything very quickly. It's nice to just have different colors so you know what's what in your camera bag. All right, so it might be a little bit difficult to see, but beneath this top panel, which first of all, this is a small rig, discontinued top panel, but it's leather wrapped and it connects via a NATO rail. Now, the NATO rail is beneath this kind of cable under here. Now with the NATO rail, of course, you can quickly add and remove accessories, which is really nice for doing takedowns if you're trying to get off the field really quickly or something like that. Attached to that top panel, I have this 15mm rod adapter and just a 6-inch carbon fiber rod, very basic. So that way I can have like a separate platform of accessories. Another thing I like about carbon fiber rod system that I use, or really any rod system, is that if you have a monitor, you can very easily, adjust your monitor, angle if need be, versus say like a magic arm where you have to kind of tighten it, loosen it, tighten, loosen it, kind of that back and forth process. This you can kind of just leave at a semi-tightness and, adjust it if you need to. Okay, so moving over to a couple of miscellaneous accessories. For my headphones, I have these Sonal SMH1000s. First of all, you can see that they pack up really small, which is nice when it's going into your camera bag, takes up less space overall. Really solid headphones for the money, very clear sounding, not cluttered or anything like that. Inside these, I have some Blue Star can skins in the color of purple. These are really nice for when it's cold outside because it kind of feels like ear muffs, keeps your ears cold, or it keeps your ears warm. And when it's warmer outside, it'll keep your ears dry, which is nice and hygienic. So really like these, solid investment. I think they're only 12 or so bucks. I'd highly recommend them. All right, so coming over to my camera shop, I have this Takata racing harness style camera strap. If you're into cars, you've probably seen these before in as car racing harnesses. Really great build quality, kind of feels just like the Peak Design Slide series. It's very thick, very comfortable. If you need to, you can attach it via these little clips on the side here if you need to do that. And it'll actually support the weight of the entire rig, which is of course fantastic. Okay, and so my last accessory is a combination of two different things that I use for shooting games, at least with this specific rig. So first of all, I have this 2.5mm length splitter. It's this white cable here. This is what I use to connect, or to be able to use both the stock grip for the camera, so that way I can go into the menu system and change different settings if I need to do that, as well as this traditional link controller. Now this I can use a record button, obviously, which is what I use when I'm shooting slow motion, because with this stock camera, it's using a cache. So you wait for the action to happen and then you record, and it takes, I believe with 240 frames per second, it's an 8-second recording, and then it writes it all to the card. So I wait for the action to happen, then I press the record button. And so I found with this is that it's a bit more efficient and that I don't have to take, one of my hands off the camera, or take my right hand off the tripod handle, or take my left hand off the lens, to come over and press one of the record buttons on the body. It's just more efficient than if I keep my hands all in place. And also with the link controller with this, if I adjust my tripod here, so I can do my tilting, my panning, and pressing record button all with one hand. Now, if this lens was a servo style lens, like some of the lenses in the Sony ecosystem, or like a B4 style lens, and I could use this actual zoom rocket here in the back if I, of course, had a servo zoom. Then I could just use this to zoom as well, which would be even more efficient, but unfortunately, this is an SLR style lens or a mirrorless lens, so it's a mechanical lens, so I can't do that. So this is just a great tip for really any video camera user. I believe if you're using like a mirrorless camera, you can use For a lot of them at least, you can use the USB port on the camera to power it with a link controller. So that's something else you can take into consideration if you're using a camera of that style. So really nice. Of course, if you're using a camera like this, like the FS5, not all video cameras have the extra link port. So you might need to buy a link splitter. These aren't the easiest to find because it's 2.5mm jack. It's not as common as a 3.5mm, headphone jack, like this one for the headphones on the camera, or like a car auxiliary port. So not really the easiest to find, I could say, but they're usually very affordable, around $3 or $4 USD. All right, so that's my rig for shooting a lot of sports events, at least in daylight, that is. So this is my main rig. If you guys enjoyed the video or found it helpful, be sure to give it a like, and thank you for watching.